with your career. Yeah, I would love to learn more about what you do and like the core components involved.
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, maybe I should just start with a brief intro, actually, which is that, so hey, everyone, it's amazing to see you all. So actually, my company, we just raised a round of financing. And so if you guys have questions on fundraising or anything like that and how we raised during COVID, which was crazy, please do let me know as well. I'm more than happy to share my advice and feedback on how we pulled it off somehow. It wasn't easy. It never gets easy, but at least it's possible. So just wanted to share that word, that encouragement to you guys during this time. So basically for me, what happened was I started my first company out of a group of a bunch of failures, and I think it's something I wish people were more aware of, which is like, not all companies are born out of like successes. Some companies are just born out of like total failures. And so for me, what happened was I was a student in college. I interned, I don't know if you know course 15 at MIT. I was known as the cop-out major at MIT. It's like one of the easiest majors out there. I'm just being brutally honest with you guys. Okay, I was like course 15, so I'm just saying the truth here. A lot of double majors in my major, and they can also vouch for that as well. But anyway, what happened was I interned on Wall Street, and I didn't get a return offer. And so I felt kind of dejected. I was in my senior year. I went back on campus, and I'm sorry for you guys who can't go on campus right now, but so I was back in my dorm room, literally like feeling depressed because everyone else was accepting offers from Google and Apple and Two Sigma and I don't know what other companies recruit these days, Jane Street. And here I was just kind of like, oh, like I don't have a job, and I was like looking around and I just felt totally lost. And so finally, I just started trading on my own. Actually, that's just how it started. This is before Robinhood, by the way. So before Robinhood existed, we had crappier platforms like Interactive Brokers and a bunch of other things. Back then, they were like really ugly, by the way. But we were using these like platforms to trade late at night, and I was like, hey, why don't I just turn? We were trading, and then it just so happens that I knew a couple friends from Harvard, and then they knew a couple friends from like this hedge fund world, and so they gave us. So we started with literally $1,000, and that was it. It was like money I earned from my internship, and just started trading it on my own. And then just grew from there. And then eventually, fast forward about 9 years later, we traded around $7 billion a day. So we were one of the largest high frequency trading funds of like our time, basically. And so just just started doing the things we love to do. Is born out of failure. And I think that's something hopefully all you guys could take from this is like sometimes the best ideas come during the hardest times of your life, and that was very true for me. I had a really difficult time during senior year, dealing with all kinds of issues in my academics as well as in my personal life, and this is just what I wanted to do. It was what kept me up at night. I would go to class during the day and then trade at night. And that's the other wonderful thing about college, by the way, is like I feel like my parents are Chinese, right? So like their generation, they'll tell me like, hey, when I was in college, right, they had a curfew where like they would turn off the electricity in their dorm room at like 10 p.m. And back then there was no laptops or cell phones. So you had to go to sleep. There's nothing you could really do. Whereas in this day and age, the best thing about our colleges in America, especially is like, it's like 3 a.m. is like the time when everyone's most awake. 2 a.m., right? Everyone's like wide awake and doing stuff. Or it's like my roommates would get up at 5 a.m. and do their sailing practice, at 5 a.m., right? So it's like early morning, late night is like the time when people are the most productive doing the thing that they truly love to do. And I think that's so amazing because it really fuels innovation. And so I'm really grateful for that. But so that was how we started, was just out of a bunch of failures.
So I guess I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Domeyard and some of the biggest challenges you guys faced.
Yeah. Oh man. So the reason why I'm writing a book about this is because it was like really crazy. I mean, think about like if you're trading $7 billion a day, like my first check I got from like external investors was $100,000. I literally met them on campus, by the way. So like this is one of those situations where how we raise money initially was like, I just put yourself out there. You guys are doing the right thing. If you guys are fundraising, you're doing the right thing. Just go to any of these events. whether it's on Zoom or like in person or whatever it is, whenever it's safe for you to do so. That's what we did is I signed up for every single pitch event. I lost every single one. I never won a single pitch competition. And that was okay, by the way, because then you start to learn that there's a difference between winning and raising money, right? They're two different things. And so what happened at one of the pitch events was that I did terrible. But then at the end, I met an investor who I was about to leave because I was like one of the bottom 5. There were, it was like Microsoft had a pitch contest. We were pitching and there were like 30 startups and there were 25 prizes because there's all these sponsors. And so there were prizes for like Azure credits or like free coupon for like a meal somewhere, I don't know, downtown or something. And we didn't win a single prize. And so I was really dejected because we were the bottom 5. And so I left. I wanted to kind of leave early because everyone's like congratulating each other, like congrats. And I was kind of like, well, we didn't really win anything. And so I wanted to leave early afterwards. But then the one thing I did right was I said thank you to the organizers. I went to the organizers and like, thank you so much for doing this. And, she was like, thank you for participating. By the way, have you met this guy? He works in your industry. And so she brought me over to this guy named Gary and I said hi to him. And it turns out, he's like, yeah, I've been around the block a few times in your industry, in the hedge funds, like, let's have a chat. And so we chatted for like 4 or 5 hours at the end. I ended up just staying. And then afterwards he was like, what do you need at this point? And I was like, well, we need money, duh. And he literally sat there and he wrote me $100,000 check. And I was like crying because, I just lost the pitch competition literally like 5 hours ago. And then at the end of it, just because I said thank you to the organizer, someone just she introduced me to the right person who ended up writing that check. I've never seen so much money in my life. I come from just so you guys know, I come from a poor background. My family, we grew up on like welfare and food stamps. And so 100,000, I didn't know a bank could hold that much money. So I called the bank and they kind of laughed in my face and they're like, let's just deposit this. And so that was my first check. And so we just kind of grew, more and more from there. But I think a lot of the early adventures were kind of putting ourselves out there. We did make a ton of mistakes. And that's why I'm writing a book, is because I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Principles by Ray Dalio. It's like a famous book in the business world about like all the principles. Ray Dalio is a CEO of one of the biggest hedge funds in the world called Bridgewater. And basically talks about all the great things that, great cultural principles that they had basically in their company. And so when we were starting our hedge fund, we wrote a set of our principles that we thought were correct. So like, let me just give you a sense of some of the principles, like having a flat organizational structure. Like we thought that, okay, I'm hiring someone 3 times my age, I was 20 at the time. Like it just makes sense to have a flatter structure. So we want them to feel welcome. And then also like having a lot of good perks. Like we want people to have unlimited vacation. Who doesn't want unlimited vacation? Or free food. And we wanted the office to look more like Google rather than like Goldman Sachs, if you get what I mean. And what else was there? Just stuff like that. And also hiring the largest service providers. Like let's hire, if we want to do accounting, let's hire like the PwCs and the KPMGs of the world, because we don't have a reputation, but they do. And so they can help us to establish more of a reputation and credibility over time. And in my book, what happens is it turns out almost all of our principles were wrong in the end. And so I'm debating between calling the book either The Finance Snake, because I was a snake, or calling it Unprincipled, because it was literally like all these principles that we thought based on like millennial, Gen Z, like what we want, right? It turns out like in the business world, when we actually did it in practice, a lot of it turned out completely wrong. So I'll just give you one example of what went wrong. So like with a flat managerial structure, right? People were still quitting our company like crazy. And we had all these great perks. And we're like, what's going on? We have free food. We have a yoga mat. We have a book club. Like, why are you still leaving? We have a flat structure. Your title is partner. That's like the highest title you could possibly have. And then we realized something, which is that people don't stay because of perks. People don't stay because of free food or yoga club or book clubs or, art clubs and soccer balls and foosball. I don't know, right? People stay because, I would stay because of like puppies and I don't know, but most people don't. Okay. So people stay because their voice is being heard, because they're learning, because their values, they're contributing to the company and they love their teammates and they're learning from each other and they're growing, right? Like that's the reason why you're staying, is because you're providing value and at the same time you're growing and learning on your job, and you love the mission, and you're growing and helping that mission in this world and society. And so we learned that the hard way through people leaving, and then finally talking to people and realizing, wow, why are we spending all this money on perks when let's just like put it into people's bonuses at the end of the year, right? And let them spend it however they want to, instead of forcing them to attend yet another dinner or attend yet another yoga night when like these guys are like, I just want to go home and take care of my kids, right? And so we learned that all the hard way. And that was one of the, and then the other lesson was like, I told you about how we hired all these big service providers, like big four accounting names and stuff like that. And it turns out like, one is they're really expensive, they're overpriced, but two is that they treat you like you're their tiniest customer. And you never want that to happen. You always want to hire people, like work with lawyers who treat you like you're the king, you're the queen, like you're their most important customer, right? And so we actually ended up switching to smaller providers. Like we literally switched to a tiny lawyer that's like $150 an hour. And if you live in Boston or Cambridge, you've probably experienced, like, talk to any lawyer there and they're like, oh, we're $800 an hour. And that's cheap for Boston, right? And so I was like, let's just go. We just went and found a lawyer in like Colorado for like $150 an hour, doing turnkey solution documents for us, and they're fast and they treat us like we're valuable. They care about us. And so that was another lesson we learned the hard way, is like bigger isn't always better. And so, yeah, like I hope that this is helpful to someone out there. And whenever you're going around your startup journey and exploring, make sure you treat it like you're almost like dating. Don't just choose the first lawyer that someone introduces you to, you know what I mean? Like try to talk around, compare prices. I had an Excel spreadsheet. I literally compared prices and I'm like, $800 versus 150. Well, it's clear who the winner is, once you kind of see everything laid out and, in front of you. So yeah, thank you, Naomi. That's a great question.
So you've mentioned that you're writing a book. So what have you learned while you've been writing?
Oh man, you mean like what have I learned in the writing process, or?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's almost like doing a startup, right? So it's like the most important thing to writing a book is similar to a startup, which is like, for me, it's having a community of people like you guys, basically, where for fundraise, I'll just tell you how I fundraise, it'll give you a sense, right? So when I was fundraising, I never fundraise alone, by the way. I always grab I hate mentors because like I never had a good mentor in my life, but I have what's called like champions or sponsors, which is people like you, where we're like, hey, let's help each other out. Every week we had a shared Excel spreadsheet with all the investors I met during the week. And I'm like, I'll introduce you to the people I met. You introduce me, we each had a tab. And then we would just ask you like, hey, can you introduce me to this guy and this guy on your tab? And I'll introduce you to this guy. And, we kind of do that back and forth. And that way it sped up our fundraising, so that instead of taking 6 months, it took us 2 months, because like we literally had 3-4 times the connections, because we kind of had this pod of startup entrepreneurs and we were all fundraising at the same time. And it doesn't matter, like, do we compete against each other? Look, it doesn't even matter, right? Because there's so many startups out there. And that's the other thing you learn, is like, we treat our competitors well, and we always make sure to be friendly to other startups no matter what, because the world is so big and there's so much money going around that you might as well just help each other. It just benefits everyone so much more. So we literally shared our connections and like made intros. Like, I think it was like every Thursday at like 5, literally, this time, every Thursday at 5 p.m. we literally did like the email intros, and I had like I copy pasted, because I already had their intros written down. So I just copy paste his email and be like, hey, we're introducing this guy. So it just took me like 5 minutes and it was done. And those 5 minutes for all of us like meant a world of difference. And so that was one thing that helped a lot. And same with writing a book, by the way. It's like, if you have someone else who's also not there, it doesn't matter what you're writing about, right? But the fact that someone else is there with you along that journey is so much more helpful. And same with just entrepreneurship in general. Whether you're fundraising or doing something else or going through other things, one thing I try to do, and that's why I love keeping in touch with communities like this, because it's so important to me and to like all the other founders I work with and get to talk to. So yeah, those are some of the lessons there.
What have been some of the highlights and most satisfying moments in your career?
Oh man, so let me talk about failure again and how that relates to success. So I told you how I didn't get a return offer for my internship. Well, what happened was I actually had I've had 3 or 4 internships on Wall Street, and the final one I had my junior summer was kind of abusive, to be honest. And I didn't realize it was abuse until like many years later. What happened was, like, I'll just give you a sense. Like, okay, they made us grab coffee every morning. That's okay, by the way. I still grab coffee for my interns every day because I just love that. And that's what I do. But they would time you. And if you don't come back within 5 minutes, you go on the ground and you do push-ups on the ground, and they like increase it by an increment of 5 every time you're late or whatever. It was like it felt like, it reminds you of a frat. I don't know what else you could think of. It's like frat hazing a little bit. And they would like cheer you on as you're doing push-ups. I'm here like in a skirt. I'm kind of weak. I don't know. I'm not like a strong, person. And so I'm like literally on the ground in my skirt, like doing these push-ups and like struggling and sweating. And at first I texted my friend, and I have a friend named Amy. I was like, haha, Amy, I'm being paid to do push-ups. And Amy texted me back, she's like, Christina, that's abuse. Get out of there, And I was like, what, really? Like, no idea. And so one of my tasks was that every morning I had to say good morning, because I sat next to the door of this 1,000-person trading floor on Wall Street. And so I had to say good morning to everyone who walked through the door because, well, I'm like sitting next to the door. What else do I do? And so I said good morning to everybody. And the higher up they were, the less likely they were to say good morning back to me. And so like the MDs, like the managing directors and partners, there was one MD who he never said good morning to me. And then one day he came in and he was in a bad mood. And he's like, Christina, like, you're half-assing this. Like your smile is not real. Like, can you cheer up a little bit more? Like be more of a better cheerleader. I'm like, okay, sure. What do you want me to do? Right. And he was like, yeah, like, exactly. You're being fake. And like, he was just like picking at me clearly. And I was like, I'm trying my best to do this job. And like, it doesn't help that you guys, I didn't say that, it doesn't help that they ignore me every morning. But anyway, so he ended up yelling at me and like, just did not, like, I was like crying in the bathroom afterwards and was not happy about that. But anyway, so there's a few people like that where he didn't know my name. He ignored me every morning and never knew my name at the end of the internship at all. I didn't get a return offer, obviously. And okay, so let's fast forward. I started this hedge fund and I was growing this business, right? And at some point, so we started with like $100,000. And the one thing you learn about any industry, especially startups as well, is like no one wants to be your first investor in any company, right? Everybody though wants to be your day two investor. Everybody wants in. And that's true for other stories like Sally Krawcheck. I don't know if you guys have heard of her or talked to her. She was CEO of Bank of America, by the way. And then she started a startup. She left and started a company called Ellevest, which is like a robo-advising, I think, company targeted at women. And so anyway, what happened was when she was fundraising, the first question investors asked her was, who else is investing? Like, really? Like, and she was like, why are you asking me this? Like, you should be making your own decision, right? And doing your own due diligence. Why do you care about other investors? And it turns out that the FOMO concept of like, fear of missing out is huge in this industry. Nobody wants to be the first investor to say yes, but everybody wants to be the second. Everybody wants in as soon as one investor comes in. And then the second question they would ask her is like, are you sure you have the experience to run a startup, to run a business? And she's like, dude, I was CEO of Bank of America. Like literally the top #1 woman in finance, and people still ask her that today. So just so you guys know, no matter how much accomplishments you guys have, people will always ask you those questions. And that's another lesson I learned the hard way. But anyway, so fast forward, 6-7 years later, we're trading like a couple $1 billion a day or whatever. And we get a phone call, my assistant picks up and, she's taking notes. There's a new investor and they want to like put in this money. And then she shows me the notepad and I'm like, what the fuck? That's sorry for swearing. But anyway, I was freaking out because that was the same person who ignored me, the MD for my summer internship, who was ignoring me every day. He called and he's like, hey, I want to invest $50 million into your hedge fund. Can I talk to the CEO? That was me, right? He didn't know that I was the intern, from 6-7 years ago that, was the bad intern that he didn't give a return on. I bet in his head, if he even discovered it, his brain would explode because he probably couldn't even imagine that, I was such a terrible intern. And yet like, here he is asking to invest in our company. So that to me was one of the kind of the tables have turned, like this guy who was ignoring me every day for the entire summer. Now he wants in on my own company. He wants to put money in. Like, that's crazy to me. And like, it just validates like all the struggles I went through of fundraising and going through all this crap. It was all worth it in the end because now I get to say no to him. I rejected him. And it felt great, at that time to be able to reject him. So yeah, it just goes to show you guys that you just keep going. Don't let these rejections, and you're going to have confrontations like that, where people aren't happy with you for whatever reason, and you just keep going and doing what you think is right. And, over time, like people will notice, and, you'll have moments like that where you get to reject someone who rejected you. And I hope that it helps to put things in perspective. And then, sorry, just another really quick lesson before, I'm sorry, Naomi, because I ask a lot, I talk a lot. But another quick lesson I learned for you guys is, I don't know about you, when I was in college, I had this like child mentality, like I'm a kid, my professors are the adults in the room, the real world professionals are the adults, the investors are the like, you know, the adults in the room, right? And I'm like a kid, and so I treat you with a lot of respect, and which is great, but then also like I kind of treat myself like a kid a little bit. And one thing you kind of realize quickly is like as soon as you graduate, you're an adult. Even now, like, you know, for 21, right, you're an adult now. And so that was one thing it was hard for me to realize until what happened was we were trying to look for lawyers and you know, try to find a law firm to help us with our legal documents and stuff. And a lawyer called me a kid. I got an email from a lawyer being like, she's just a kid, you know, she's not worth our time. And it wasn't meant for me, by the way. The email was meant for his colleagues, but I was accidentally CC'd in the email that was like literally like, she's just a kid. And I was like, oh, you know, because one is that's how the industry views me as a young, you know, founder, right? And I get it. Maybe they think like we're not going to succeed and we're just a waste of their time. I understand, but we were funded. We were going to give them money, and they still didn't want us as a client. So it was a little hurtful. And then I realized like actually there's something I could change, which is that I can treat myself like an adult and realize that I'm an adult too. I have value to bring. And so the next lawyer I, you know, talked to, the first question I said is, how can I help you? How can I help you? Hey, you know, or like, and that really changed the dynamic of the conversation all of a sudden, because I'm providing value, or I'm saying I'm of value too. And so to give you an example, like, let's say if you're applying to a summer internship right now, right? And a company hasn't gotten back to you yet, you can be like, hey, by the way, I have access to my school's entrepreneurship club or my dorm room or my, you know, major's mailing list. I can forward your job posting to these people. Or if you want to come speak at this event, you know, we can welcome you as a speaker, right? And it's like, they will answer your email. They will not ignore you, because now all of a sudden you're providing them value that they've never seen before. And so just knowing your worth, knowing your value, that even your network today is super valuable, and knowing how to use that. And, you know, that is extremely important. And so I've had friends who've gotten jobs through that method of basically saying, hey, by the way, you know, I'm still waiting for your email, but in the meantime, if you want me to forward a job posting to, you know, my entire class of, you know, 1,000 people, like, happy to do that. And they're like, holy crap, this person's amazing and knows how to bring value, you know, in different ways, right? And so just know that you're valuable, you're worthy. And that's something that took me many years to kind of learn, but now like it changes every conversation dynamic to being suddenly like, Christina, I need your help for something, because now I know where you can help me. Or Naomi or Grace, you know, like, here's how you guys can help, is forward my job posting to your dorm room, or have this person speak at an event, or whatever it is, right? Because that's how you guys get the opportunities that you're looking for, as well as so never, I don't like, that's why I'm not a big fan of mentorship again, because mentorship is like me, like it's like someone up above helping you the whole time, whereas what if you think about it as like an equal sponsorship, like I'm helping you and you're helping me, you know? And it's like that way, it just, everything just works out in the end. And I've had so many great business kind of working relationships like that have turned out incredible over the years because of that. So yeah, just another quick lesson is the child adult mentality. I think it's common in Asian cultures as well. So by the way, so, you know, treat your elders with respect or whatever. But in America, it's kind of like, you know, you just treat everyone, if you just treat everyone like they're an equal, sometimes they like being treated like they're an equal, you know, not that they don't want to be treated like they're a god, they want to be treated like they're human, right? And so just think about that, you're all human beings, and, you know, it makes it a little easier. So yeah, that's hopefully that helps someone out there.
Oh, that's a very cool takeaway. I guess I was wondering, you've talked about this a little bit about your experience working with investors and venture capitalists, but what pieces of advice would you give to startups that are starting fundraising?
Oh my gosh, so much. So first off, during COVID, here's just how we did it, okay? We used, to meet investors, all we did was sign up for all these events that you guys are doing now. So sign up for all of these, you know, collegiate capital partners, HUCP and MIT's like capital partners, sign up for all of their events, go to all of their office hours, meet all of these investors. By the way, I met one of our investors through one of these events. So thank you. I should be thanking you guys for doing this. So yeah, just sign up for every single thing you can think of, even if you think they're not going to be helpful, even if you know, maybe they're not even in your industry or whatever, because the worst thing they can do do is they'll introduce you. They'll be like, sorry, I don't invest in this, but I know someone who does, and then you get an intro and another intro, and eventually you meet the right person. So just putting yourself out there was super helpful. How we got the round closed was by using technology. And this is so important to all of you guys. And this is advice. If there's one thing you want to take away from today, is to please use DocSend for sending your pitch deck and DocuSign for getting all of your financing documents closed. So DocSend, I'll just give you a sense of why it's different. Don't use email to send your pitch deck, because I've had experiences where investors like VCs will forward your deck to like a competitor, or they're not really trying to get info from you. DocSend can show you, first off, they have to enter their email and it shows you their IP address and everything, but also it shows you how many seconds or minutes they're viewing every page of your deck. So like you can also analyze like which pages are more important, which pages are less important, but also do they actually care, right? So if a VC is viewing your deck like 5 times in a day, you're like, holy crap, this is amazing. Or they forward it to someone and it's another VC and they're viewing it 5 times a day. I reached out to someone, I'm like, hey, I noticed you're viewing our deck. Do you want to have a chat? And they're like, yeah, that would be great. Sorry for viewing your deck, right? Like they don't even realize that you get an email every time they view your deck. And also, so I've had an experience where a VC viewed my deck for 1 second. And I'm like, well, you viewed our deck for 1 second, you're clearly not interested, right? And so that's happened as well, where they're like, I saw your pitch deck. I'm like, yeah, you saw it for 1 second. Like, I know you're not interested. It's okay, just let me know, right? So DocSend, they were just acquired by Dropbox, I think. So just goes to show you they're a great company. If you want a free trial, I'm just giving you all the hacks here. So if you want the 3-month free trial of DocSend, the key to doing that is you sign up for a company called Brex, which is like the startup corporate like credit card. And so I don't know what the requirement, Brex does have a little bit of requirement. I think you need like $20,000 in the bank or whatever, but try to get 20K somehow from different, startup school resources, maybe like if a school's fund can give you a little bit here and there, put together 20K, get an account in Brex, because the best thing about Brex is that they have all these different startup deals, including the 3-month advanced trial, which is better than any other deal I've ever seen for a company like DocSend. And so that way I just used that advanced trial and was able to just put together the entire round, including data rooms. So they can do data rooms if you want to put like your finances on there and other kind of documents that are more sensitive. You can password protect it, you can watermark it. So if they download it or screenshot it, it'll still have the watermark on it. So there's different ways to like protect yourself, and also make sure that you can close around faster. And then to close around, we used what's called DocuSign, which is a completely different company with a similar name, but that's just for signing documents. And so DocuSign, you don't need to use Brex or any other advanced trial. Like you can just use it for a month. And so what happened was we literally met we had a bunch of people who like wanted to invest tiny bits here and there, like 50K, 100K. You guys might be in similar shoes. Like you meet somebody like, oh, I'm an angel, I'll put in like 25,000. Is 10,000 okay? Just tiny bits. And I was frustrated because we couldn't find a lead investor. And then eventually we just asked all of our investors, can you keep introducing us? And we were introed over and over again until finally an investor of another investor introduced us to what would become our lead investor. And so on Friday, one of the Fridays earlier like on March 1st or 2nd, I don't remember, the Friday of the first Friday of March, basically, I was like, will you be our lead investor? And they're like, yes, let's close this. And so then on Saturday, I sent them the DocuSign. And it's like, please sign ASAP, right, this document. And DocuSign, that way it's easier. They don't have to print or scan anything. They just e-sign on the spot. By Monday, they signed it and they wired the check in. And then I sent the DocuSign to all the co-investors and around the smaller people who we got to choose. And, so suddenly we were picking and choosing who we wanted in the round. So we sent it to the people we wanted. And by Tuesday night, all the signatures and all the wires were in. And so literally from Friday to Tuesday, like that's how fast it was to close the round. But before finding the lead, it was awful because it took us like 3-4 months. And that's something that's common, by the way, is you guys will all experience this too. If you don't have a lead, it'll take like a long time to find that lead. And then once you find the lead, it takes like a week to close this round. So please do use technology to your advantage for both of those. It really helped us close. I've closed rounds in the past, like for my first startup, for the hedge fund, I've closed startup rounds like without like these technologies back when they didn't exist, and it was awful. It would take us like 7-8 months, but now it just takes like 3 days. So definitely recommend doing that to try your best to close. And then yeah, just putting yourself out there, getting these conversations going. Oh, and also Calendly, sorry, that's another technology as well. I love, instead of like listing all my times manually every single email, because that does take up like 10 minutes of your time, right? Just be like, here's my Calendly link. Would any of these times work for you to connect? And then just link any of these times, like link it to your Calendly. And that way it's respectful, because I know some people worry like, what if it's disrespectful to like be like, here's my Calendly, right? So instead just be like, would any of these times work? And that way, like they'll just click on your Calendly, schedule time, and it's super quick and convenient for both for them and for you. So just finding ways to save time and to streamline your fundraising process is super nice. And then I did have a spreadsheet with like all the investors that we spoke with. So just keeping a spreadsheet and listing all the reasons why they're not interested or why they're interested, and going from there. Oh, then the other quick advice is that when an investor, after the first call, they'll be like, oh, I'll talk with my team and get back to you later. That means they're not interested, by the way. That's like 99% of the time, that's like a no, is like, we'll think about it. I'll get back to you and talk to the team. That's always no. It just means that they're too embarrassed to reject you on the spot. They just want to reject you a few days later. What is a yes, though, is if they say, I'm interested, or even better, I'm very interested. That means yes, by the way. That's like the only thing that means yes, is I'm very interested. What's the next step? Like, can I do another call? Can you do a call with all my partners? That's a really good sign. And so when they say I'm very interested, like with our lead investor, they said, I'm very interested 3 times. And that was when I knew that we were onto something finally, for real. So yeah, just learning the language that they use is super, super important as well. But yeah, like that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give. And then the other thing, sorry, I keep rambling. I know I don't even know how much time we have, but I'm not a Y Combinator alum, and that's another thing as well. As I'm sure you guys have read the news about like your friends doing Y Combinator, or your classmates, right, doing Y Combinator, who are raising like $30 million at $100 million valuation out of Y Combinator. They just started their company like a month ago, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I've seen that before, and that's something that like you should realize is, yes, like these programs are extremely valuable. But just because you don't get in, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. And there are a lot of better solutions out there as well that you could definitely look at. And so Y Combinator is great, right? Because they have their own valuations. Like literally every startup there raises like huge rounds coming out of there. But there are other great programs out there that I think you guys should consider as well. So I never did Y Combinator. I did Mass Challenge, and also HUCP, or the CCP. Like these kinds of programs are amazing as well. But if you do want to do like a big accelerator type of program, Mass Challenge is an incredible program as well to consider. And these are not mutually exclusive. You can do Y Combinator and Mass Challenge and DCU FinTech Center and NYU's EFL program. You can do all these simultaneously. Nobody cares, which is also great, by the way. I love it. But what I love about Mass Challenge and also EFL, which is the Endless Frontier Labs, was that these are equity-free accelerators. So they're nonprofit organizations. They're not here to like make $1 billion off of you. They're really just here to help you, and they're nonprofits. And Mass Challenge pairs you with pilots, basically. So if you are a fintech company, for instance, I did Mass Challenge Fintech, and they paired us with like Putnam Investments and Columbia Threadneedle, like all these big financial firms, to do pilots with them. And so they're extremely helpful at very low cost as well. And I see, Grace said you guys help with Y Combinator. Good, I'm glad. So please do take advantage of every single resource you can find. Just put yourself out there and make sure you learn to like normalize rejection, because we apply to like every single opportunity, even today for my second company, and we get rejected all the time, and that's okay. I just put it on a mountain of rejections and I move on to the next opportunity, the next application. There will always be more opportunities out there. So just keep on going. Don't get too emotional. If you get rejected from Y Combinator, look, what is it, 95% of startups get rejected or more. Like that's okay. And just move on and keep on going, because there's always great opportunities out there. And it doesn't mean it's the end. If you lose a pitch competition like we always did, doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed, right? Another good example, I don't know if you know Akamai. Akamai runs the internet, right? They're like the backbone of the world's internet today. They were an MIT startup. It started by Tom Layton. Tom Layton pitched at the MIT 100K competition, whatever it's called, the 100K challenge. Back then it was the 50K challenge. They lost, you guys. They lost the 50K, and now they're one of the most successful startups coming out of MIT. It just goes to show you that there's a difference between winning a contest and raising funding and success in the end, right? It has nothing to do with how many trophies you get at the very beginning, right? So it's hard work. It comes down to hard work and hustling and not giving up. So yeah, sorry, my very long answer, but Naomi, I'll pass it back to you.
So now we're gonna open up questions to people in the audience, if anyone has anything to ask.
I guess just quickly, I'm an open book, by the way, so like you're welcome to ask me. It doesn't even have to be startup related. I'm a completely open book. So if there's something just like bothering you or something on your mind, whatever it is, like I'm more than happy to chat about stuff. Like I'm just here to like I want to be here to help you guys and to like provide some encouragement during this time, as most of you guys are probably still you know, in school from home and worried about your futures and careers, I'm guessing. Maybe not. You're very lucky if you're not. But yeah, I'm more than happy to just help and you know, provide some guidance. So.
Yeah, I had a quick question, I guess, like going from like your first startup to the second startup, like what inspired you to like make that transition in like terms of like starting a new venture, and what was like the experience like, I guess, like changing ship or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the companies are slightly similar, but also slightly different. I mean, the first company is a hedge fund, right? And some of the things I liked parts of the organization, and there's parts of the things I did that I hated. One of the things I didn't like was that I wasn't making a difference in the world. Period. Like, and that's something that no matter what hedge funds tell you that they're trying to make a difference, whatever. Like, no, you're like at the end of the day, we're working for all of our investors are billionaires. And we're making billionaires even richer. And like, do I want to do that for the rest of my life? Like, no, I don't really want to, even though, yeah, it makes a lot of money, it pays well. But I want to do other things that are more meaningful in my career. And I think that's something that you just kind of realize as you grow up is like, as I kind of got there in my life, I was like, you know what, like I want to do something more meaningful and work with people who, you know, just do something where I can make people smile, make people a little happier, you know? And so that was the biggest thing. And so actually Databento is interesting because yeah, we're a market data company. So we provide basically like stock market data to financial institutions, but our average user is like 25 years old, you know, analysts at like Goldman Sachs, basically. And so we're empowering the people at the bottom of the pyramid at these large firms to get access to data that they never had before. And so just, it's amazing because we're catering to people who, you know, for me, like traditionally didn't have access to data or who are, you know, just like didn't feel like they were enjoying their environment very much at work. And so, yeah, like it's a lot more meaningful for sure. But yeah, so, oh, you guys have a fireside chat with Tom Layton on Monday. Oh my goodness. Please ask him about, I just mentioned him. He's the Akamai guy, you know, that you know, lost the 50K. Please ask him about that because maybe I'll just register myself and ask him. What a small world. It's incredible because yeah, it's a small world in the startup world, right? In the startup space. So, but yeah, I guess there's some differences there. But what happened was like, actually, I was just sick I burnt out of the hedge fund, just honest answer. And I was sick of dealing with data vendors. We had about a dozen data vendors and data sold by head count. So I had to go back to like 12 vendors and like renegotiate our licenses every day. And so I was just like, I don't want to do this. I want to start a company where I can streamline the licensing and solve my own problems that I faced. And so it kind of came a little bit naturally there. But yeah, like I think it's okay, by the way, like if for a lot of founders, you know, the first company doesn't succeed and that's okay. I mean, 95% of startups will fail over time. And so that's another thing is just, it's okay to move on. It's okay to, you know, accept that, you know, things aren't working out the way you wanted to and to go off and do something different. It's your life to live, right? You want to live the life that you want for yourself, not the life that others expect of you. And that's another thing I had to realize over time is like, there's a life that other people, when my classmates expect me to like live this kind of life, but I wanted something different. And so that's fine. But thanks for Kesh. It's a great question. Oh, I see Mamuda, you asked a question in the chat room. Oh, thank you. Just wondering, how did you pick your very first team, you said? So, you know, to be honest, hiring was one of the biggest areas that we made huge mistakes in and something that I'm writing a lot about because of the number of mistakes we made in the hiring process. So our first, like my co-founders, I got very lucky, I feel like, because I have two co-founders and we had absolutely nothing in common. But that was a good thing, by the way. We had one thing in common, which was that we had the same career path that we wanted to pursue. Besides that, we weren't even friends beforehand. We literally had nothing else in common. We met each other at the MIT like trading competition that they do. I think it was either in the fall or spring, like the traders at MIT, they host like that competition. We literally met there, you guys. And I lost the competition. I was like second to last place. Like I would have done better if I just sat there doing nothing, but I tried and I lost a lot of money, paper money, of course, but you get the point. I was terrible. But then I said hi to the guy who won. I was like, you were amazing. Can we please keep in touch? I'm like a big fan, you know? And he ended up becoming my co-founder, and we're still working together today. He's just pinging me on Slack. Like literally, this is like a decade later. Like just crazy how that happens is you just go to these industry events and yeah, you might have nothing else in common. We were different majors. We had different friend groups. He's introverted. I'm a little more loud and, you know, obnoxious. And he's like this quiet, you know, nerdy guy, right? And we just ended up like, it was amazing. It just an amazing partnership that has lasted for so many incredible years. And so that's the other thing is like, you don't have to have friends. And the other thing is like, I actually try not to hire friends, by the way. That's my policy is I try my best not to hire friends. Because like once you hire someone who's a friend, you unfortunately like legally, right, you're now employer and employee first and foremost, right, rather than friend and friend. And so what happens is, what if they get fired? What if they leave the company? What if things don't get along, you know, and they want to, you part ways, right? Then your friendship kind of, unless you're both very professional, very mature, then chances are your friendship's also on the line too. We've had that happen before where we hired one of my like friend, you know, one of my co-founders had a frat brother who wanted to join. And so we hired him as the first employee. And then when he left, like the fraternity was like ripped apart. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like it's, you know, we didn't mean it for it to end that way. But that's one thing you just have to realize is, the other lesson that we learned was actually the first employee of any startup almost never works out, by the way, for any company, whether it's like Airbnb, Dropbox, Twitter, the first employees of like these types of companies almost never work out because they basically have the same responsibilities as a founder, but they're paid like nothing, you know, and they don't get any equity, right? Compared to the founders where you might be getting 50-50 with your co-founder, and then the employee comes in and they get like 1%, you know, 2%. And so obviously like they're going to feel snubbed at some point and they're going to want to leave, and that's okay. Just realize that and learn those lessons and then move on. So that's why like with our early teammates, actually one thing I did at Databento is the first day of work for every single employee who joins, I always tell them like, you're welcome to use this as a stepping stone to a better company, to a better opportunity, a higher paying job, you know, whatever it is. And we will help you get there so long as you do your most honest work with, you know, your best and your most honest work while you're here with us today. And they love that because it promotes a culture of like transparency. And so when they do want to go to grad school or when they do want to find another job at Google or somewhere else, like we will fully support them and they know that I have their back. And so you know, the other humbling thing as a founder you learn is like, you're not the perfect, you know, fit for everyone, right? Like there's no such thing as one perfect company for everybody. And so just learning that and being able to just say it and communicate that and be like, we're not a cult, you know, like if you want to leave, great. You know, we're not going to punish you for leaving, right? Like that's what a cult is they punish you. And so, so we try our best to just be mature and be adults about it. And that's another big lesson I learned from hiring. And as a result, actually, no one's left our company. So, I mean, we've only been alive for since 2019. It's only been 2 years, but still like, it's nice that no one's wanted to leave so far. So those are things that I think as founders, you just have to learn, including for your older employees as well. Like just letting them know, like you can try us out, just like we're trying you out, right? And if it works out, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's okay. And you know, we can all move on maturely and go from there. So yeah, I still remember, by the way, the first day I had to fire someone at my hedge fund. I cried like all night before because I knew I had to be the one to like do the firing. And if you guys want to learn how to fire people, just let me know. I'm an expert now at firing. But basically what happened was I actually talked to my old internship, one of my other bosses, like at my old internship, the one that didn't give me the return offer. There's actually one boss who I did get along with, who was really nice. And so at 2 a.m., he gave me a phone call. He knew I was like, I post on social media, Facebook, like I have to fire someone tomorrow. I'm like crying, I'm freaking out. And he called my cell phone. He's like, Christina, like, look, I fired 10,000 people in my lifetime before. Here's how you do it. And he just gave me the guide to like how to do it. And I felt so much better knowing that this is something that happens every day and it has to happen for the sake of your company, right? And so But basically what you do is you always blame the board, by the way. Whenever something wrong happens, you have to reject someone, you just blame the board. Hey, like the board decided not to accept your application. Oh, the board has decided to let you go, and that way, like you always let your board be like the bad guy in the situation. And it always works out. If they ask for why, you never say why. You're just like, oh, that's for another conversation. If you want to chat about it later with your direct manager, we can schedule a call a month from now, and let's go from there. They never schedule a call a month from now. They've already moved on, right? And so that way it prevents lawsuits. Like, unfortunately, when you're firing someone, it comes down to like, making sure that you protect yourself so that you don't get sued for like unlawful termination or anything like that. So that's why you don't specify any reason. You never say, oh, you didn't do a good job, because then, they're going to hire a lawyer and claim that they did do a good job. So sorry, I know I can ramble forever, but hopefully that helped Mamuda answer your question somewhat. I guess oh, sorry, go ahead.
It was a quick question about like getting yourself in front of lots of people. You mentioned like investors and people to talk to. You mentioned like going to these sort of events, but did you like cold call people as well? I've been advised to like get on LinkedIn and just like start just like connecting with random people and messaging them, etc. Does that work? Is that a acceptable thing to do? I feel quite weird about it.
Yeah, great question, Alex. So it only works if it's associated with an event. So for instance, if you see that this big VC is speaking at this event, and maybe you didn't even attend, you could just be like, hey, thanks for attending. Hey, thanks for speaking at this event. By the way, I'm doing this startup, right? And so that way they assume that you attended. Or so like another big event I did was called Venture 135. You guys, if you want to write these down, you're welcome to. So these are all free startup events. I did one called Venture 135, and then there's another one called like Village something, I don't remember. But anyway, just like sign up for all these random, like GCV, I think was the name of another one. These are like big startup events where you just sign up. I think what happened was I actually applied to pitch at this event, and I didn't get accepted to pitch, but they were like, hey, even though you didn't get accepted, we're going to give you a free ticket to attend the event. So I got the ticket to attend the event. I looked at the list of who was attending, and there's like a bunch of VCs, and I just added each of them on the day of the event. I added them on LinkedIn because I knew they were at the event. So just added them on LinkedIn and be like, hey, thanks for attending this event. By the way, I'm running a startup, and just feel free to email me if you're interested. And out of like maybe 10 of the invites I sent, maybe like 2 of them got back to me, and they were like, yeah, actually, I would love to talk. Can I email you? And like, great. And then we scheduled a phone call and went from there. So it does work, but it's, cold email, like cold messaging doesn't work unless you pretend like, okay, you both attended the same event. I'm just telling you this as like hacks to, it works, right? So, yeah, just register for events and then, go to these events, figure out who's attending and add them like during the event, almost like you're networking. So, yeah.
And you would use LinkedIn. You'd go LinkedIn, add them, message. Fair?
Yep, totally fair.
Cool.
Another way that works as well, I've never done this personally, but I've heard that some of my friends, they've used Twitter, where maybe if you follow these VCs on Twitter, right? And maybe they're posting about a topic and you just keep on responding to them or asking, answering their questions. A lot of VCs have questions like, hey, does anyone know someone in the healthcare space I can talk to about this problem? And so if you can help them, and again, it comes down to providing value, right? If you provide them with something, then they're more likely to respond. Oh, another great way is like, hey, I'm a part of this network here. I'll introduce you as a speaker for this event, right? And then it's chances of getting a response are a lot higher as a result. Yeah. I see a question from Jonathan. Let's see. Oh, thanks, Jonathan, for watching my YouTube videos. Do you have any tips for growing social presence? Start building that brand early. Oh, interesting. Social media is so controversial. I feel like I have a love-hate relationship. I don't know about you guys. Like one day I like hate Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And then the next day, and Clubhouse, I like hate all of them. The next day I'm like, wow, like Clubhouse, I just met another investor, I'm like the best thing ever. Thank you. Right. And so it's so controversial to me. I still don't really know what to think of it, but I just do have to admit that it has helped me to raise my round of financing. So one thing that's helped a lot for me on social media is like trying to tell stories, like instead of posting and promote, just blindly promoting your startup, like, hey, we do this. Does anyone want to invest? Like no one's going to answer you, right? If you just say, hey, I have a startup and we do this, like anyone want to invest in us? Like it never works. What does work for me is like talking about the mistakes I made, even during college, like talking about like, hey, I failed this many times and I started my company out of failure, right? And that grabs your attention, obviously, like it did for this as well, right? It kind of shows like, whoa, like this person's weird and interesting, and I want to like get to know this person more. And so for me, it's like telling stories on social media and using it as a way to kind of connect with people has definitely been helpful as well. And then just knowing which channels are correct to use. So like, I do like Twitter and that like, people can follow you, but you don't have to follow them back. And so that way you don't get to see their spam, like if you don't want to see certain people, you can always mute them and stuff like that. And LinkedIn also, you can mute them if you don't want to hear from them all the time, but at least like it does grow your presence a little bit. And then Clubhouse as well. I started using Clubhouse recently. It's been okay. Just listening to people talk. Sometimes you get like I don't know, like the VC talks is the same stuff over and over again. It's kind of boring, to be honest. But on occasion you come across a great room and you get a VC who you want to connect with. So yeah, I don't know. You just kind of never know. I guess it's never too late or too early to start. I guess maybe another quick lesson was one of the lessons my co-founder learned. So I told you my co-founder, one of them is like actually both of them, super introverted. Neither of them had a LinkedIn until they were like 27 years old or something, which by the way, in our world is very like old to finally get a LinkedIn. They never got any social media. One of them still doesn't have a Facebook today, which to me, I'm like, really? You don't have a Facebook at all? But yeah, so the lesson we learned was that we suddenly, we need to hire people, right? And I don't know if you saw my posting, I've been posting desperately on Twitter, like we're hiring like systems engineers and stuff, but unfortunately, like none of us are a part of the communities that systems engineers are a part of. And so we are struggling right now actually to hire the right person for that role. And at the same time, my co-founder's like, oh, I wish we had social media presence because maybe we would have found that person earlier, but we can't find them right now. And so yeah, just it's never too early to kind of start that. And I think the easiest thing is just be genuine, and you'll end up meeting the right people eventually. So yeah. Maybe like one more question if anyone has any. Or maybe what I can do is just end with some advice if you guys want, final advice for people. So let me think. I guess, yeah, the biggest thing I learned, when I was starting a business is kind of like that one is like normalizing rejection, I mentioned, which is like, you're going to continuously be rejected. I'm rejected every single day and I get used to it. And it still hurts because you're human, right? And so even as much as you try to get your emotions away from it, it still sucks when you get rejected from your job or from an internship or from a startup pitch contest, whatever it is, but or an investor. But you just use it as an opportunity to keep going and keep trying and keep finding the right people. And the good news is there's so many investors out there today that you'll eventually find the right people if you just keep on looking and searching. And so that's one thing that was really helpful for me. And then maybe another thing is that in your lifetime, one thing for me career wise is like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? My commencement speaker my year was Drew Houston. Shows you how old I am. Drew Houston was the Dropbox CEO. So he spoke my year and that's what he told me. And I was like, oh my God, that's so true. Like you're the average of like the 5 people you spend time with. And so whether you go work for a large company, right? It's the same thing when you interview for a large firm, look at who your interviewer is and who you're going to sit next to, right? Because those are the people you're going to become similar to. I interned at Goldman Sachs one of my summers, and at Goldman is really random, but the average person on my team at Goldman Sachs gained on average like 50 to 60 pounds ever since they joined. And I was like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to exercise and, be healthy. And by the end of the summer, I was like 20 pounds heavier. I was like, you are the average. It is so true. You become like your team. And I learned that the hard way. You really do become like your team. And also socially, right? Like how you interact and how happy or sad you are on the job, how intense and stressed you are is a direct impact of how stressed everyone else is around you. And so just remembering that for me was super important. And that includes with hiring. Like there are some people who are really qualified for the job, but if they, we're interviewing them and they clearly hate their previous boss and their previous boss and their previous company and they're grumpy all the time and stuff, like we don't want to work with that because, that mood and attitude affects the entire atmosphere of the company, even remotely, by the way. It still affects you, across your computer. So definitely that's one thing that was important for us. And then also, let's see, I like to think of my life as like, imagine you're like a timeline and you're in your deathbed, like at 100 years old, and you like look back on your life and you think about like, where do I want to be, at age 30, 40, 50, right? And all the way up until you're 100. And I realized like, do you want to work at Google, for 20, 30 years? Or do you want to start a company or write a book or, I don't know, quit your job altogether and become, I don't know, like an influencer, a movie star? I've had friends who've done that, by the way. I actually had some MIT friends who are actors today, professional photographers, and they went to MIT, studied core 6, and now they're like literally professional photographer doing like celebrity photography. I'm like, good for you. That's really respectable. I had another friend at MIT who majored in I think it's called 21W, which is like, I don't even know, it's called writing, like science writing, I think is the name of the major. I don't know, you probably even haven't heard of it. Apparently, so when they were a student, everybody made fun of them. Like literally everybody was like, what are you doing? Like, this is MIT. Why are you studying writing at like a place like MIT? Well, now they're the editor. Now today, they're the editor-in-chief of Scientific American. I'm like, good for you. Like for, just sticking to your guns and living the life that you want to lead without, hearing, they had all this judgment from all their friends and stuff. But so yeah, just think on your life like that as a timeline and just think about the things you really want to do and just go for it, because life is super, super short. My brother passed away in January. And, for me, it was traumatizing. I mean, he was a sophomore at the University of Michigan. So, he's like literally your age, and he, is 20 years old, and he had a heart attack in his sleep, just totally unexpected, no previous health conditions at all. And we were just, I was just devastated. I mean, the whole family, my parents and everyone was devastated. And it just, for me, was a reminder that life is so incredibly short, you guys. Like, please, every moment, like, take care of your friends, keep in touch with people, reach out to people, like ask how people are doing, because you just never know how long or short everyone's timelines are, and also just a reminder to do the things you love to do as well. Wake up, do the thing that makes you want to wake up in the morning, right? If you're not waking up and you want to keep sleeping, it's a sign that you want to do something different, and that's okay. And so just keep switching around. The average, I'm a millennial, so the average millennial has 17 different jobs before retirement. You guys are even younger, right? You're like, what do you call it? Gen Z or Centennials, whatever it's called. The average like Centennial has even more than 17 jobs before retirement. And that's normal. I know our parents are different. Our parents' generation, you graduate, you work at IBM for like 40 years and you retire. Like, that's like what my parents expect of me, right? Is work at IBM or like Google for 40 years and then like retire. But I think today we're in a different time and different day and age. And so just knowing that's normal is very, for me, was very encouraging. So hopefully I've dropped some interesting feedback and advice for you guys. Good luck with your own journeys, no matter where you go. And look, like startups, being a CEO, right? It's not always the right thing for everybody as well. So if you don't want to do that, then great. You want to work for a large company, great. If you want to be a full-time parent, good for you, or travel the world or have side gigs all the time, like whatever you want to do, right? It's your life, and that's great. Congrats, right? So just realizing that is just so, so important. So thank you all. I really was looking forward to this and really excited to meet you finally. So I hope you guys can keep in touch. My favorite social media things are LinkedIn probably, and Twitter as well. So feel free to keep in touch. But yeah, thank you again. And thank you, Naomi, for moderating. Thank you to Grace, for doing this as well. And everyone else for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for speaking. Oh, it was lovely to have you today.
Yeah, thank you again. Okay, bye guys. I have to go, but take care. Have a good weekend.
Just closing things. So we have the innovation kickoff panel that's happening tomorrow, and that'll be our first innovation fund bootcamp event. This was kind of like a taster event. So to see you guys all really, really speakers on the panel, in addition to candidness that you were able to experience today yourself. All right, have a nice rest of your Thursday. Bye.